Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today on this lovely Saturday afternoon, or morning or night, depending on where you are. My name is Mairead O'Connor, and I have been teaching for a long time now, for over 20 years. So I can say with confidence that today's topic is very, very important. It will be incredibly useful for you when you start your teaching career. Because we are talking all about asking questions. Asking questions in class takes up the majority of our time, okay? And we're always asking one sort of question or the other. So in today's webinar, we're going to run through the common types of questions that we ask our students. So as always, we're going to run through the presentation, and then for the second half of our hour, we will have a Q&A session. So if I say anything that you'd like to know more about, pop your question into the chat box or write it down on a piece of paper. And once the presentation is finished, we will have loads of time to answer all of those questions. All right, are we ready? Let's go. So asking questions in class. We ask questions in lots of different scenarios. There are lots of different types of teacher language. The three main categories of questions that we would ask would be related to eliciting, concept checking, and giving instructions and instruction checking. Okay, these are our three main categories of questions. So we are going to run through those three categories in more detail. So let's start by looking at eliciting. Eliciting includes techniques used to prompt students to come up with information rather than giving it to them. Okay, we never want to just tell students stuff. Okay, we don't want to give away the information so easily. Because a lot of times if we just spoon feed students information, it goes in one ear, straight out the other, okay? We want to make them work for the information, okay? And we do this by eliciting. Eliciting can be used to brainstorm a topic. Yeah. So if, for example, they are going to learn a lot of vocabulary related to sport, we might start the class by asking them to brainstorm as many sports as they can think of. Okay, it will warm up their brains to the topic. We can use it to produce target language or vocabulary. Okay, so if we're teaching a particular grammar point, or if we're teaching a particular set of items, of words, we can try to elicit them rather than just telling the students what they are. The overall aim of eliciting is to find out how much the students already know. Okay, we want to give them the chance to tell us before we tell them. Okay, as you start working through your assignments, you will see that eliciting is a massive part of each assignment. Why is eliciting so important? Well, many reasons. The top three reasons would be that through eliciting, students take a more active role in the learning process. Okay, they're not just sitting there listening. Okay, they are actually participating, engaging. Yeah, I like to think of it as the students like rifling through all of the information that's in their brain. Okay, while they're listening, they're thinking, what could this word be? What could that phrase be? Okay. Eliciting also allows students to bring their life experiences and language knowledge into the classroom. Okay. So again, they're taking control of their learning. Eliciting is also used as a foundation on which to build further learning. Okay. So when you think of eliciting, think of it as a whole process. Okay. We're making students think about the stuff they already know. Okay, we're helping them think of maybe words, phrases, grammar points related to what they already know, and therefore they're like constructing their knowledge from what they knew before and what they know now. Okay, think of it as like building blocks. Okay, and so eliciting involves students in the learning process. We can use lots of different methods for eliciting. A very common one is pictures. Okay, we can bring in visuals, images. Okay, we can use role play. Okay, we can act out little scenarios. We can create context. We can use description. We can use synonyms. Okay. For example, if I wanted to teach my students the phrase to make a mountain out of a molehill, okay, I could ask them, do you know another phrase that means to exaggerate something or to make something more important than what it really is? Okay, that would be an example of using a definition or using some synonyms. Okay, so that's one we use pretty frequently, especially with quite higher levels. So they would be just some different elicitation techniques that we can use. I wonder if you can think of any more. Can you think of any more methods we could use? If you can, pop your answers in the chat box and I'll have a look in a moment and see if you came up with anything different. While you're thinking of some more possible elicitation methods, let's look at an example. So imagine we want to teach our students the adjective excited. Okay. Now, we do not come into class and say, hello, everyone. Our first word is excited. It means very happy. We absolutely do not want to do that. Instead, we want to elicit. And here's an example of how we might do that. Teacher comes in and says, look at this picture. How does the woman feel? Students, she is smiling. So happy? Teacher, yes, she is very happy. What's another word for very happy? Okay. And hopefully our students will say, excited. And the teacher says, yes, that's it. What are other things I might be excited about? You won the lottery? Yeah, that's a good example. I would be very excited if I had won the lottery. Okay. So you can see in this dialogue how we have elicited the word excited. We haven't told them what it means, okay, but we've led them in the direction of the meaning. Okay. So when you do your assignments, this is the type of thing you'll be doing, okay? You will have to think of how to lead students to the answer rather than just telling them the answer, okay? So that's a really, really nice example of how eliciting might work. When eliciting, there are a couple of things we really need to remember. Firstly, your students don't know everything. All right. So in the example we've just seen about excited, students did know the word, which is great, but sometimes they won't know the word, and that's absolutely fine. Okay. We can't expect them to know everything. That's why they're in class, right? They're there to learn more English. So if students don't guess the word, it's not a problem. Just tell them. Okay. If they clearly don't know, tell them. Okay, we don't want to turn it into like a protracted guessing game. Okay, eliciting is not meant to be a guessing game. It's just meant to give them the opportunity to tell us before we tell them. But if they don't know, tell them and move on. When you're eliciting, try to provide sufficient context to guide the students to the target language. Okay. The target language here means whatever you're teaching them. For example, excited could be our target language because that's the word we want them to learn. So if I said to my students, so this is a feeling, all right, that's not sufficient context, right? because it could be anything. It could be a positive feeling, it could be a negative feeling. So we want to provide context, like this is another word for really happy, okay? Or this is a positive emotion that we feel before something good is going to happen, okay? In a similar vein, try to avoid using vague questions which are open to interpretation. All right. So try to lead them as directly to the target language as you can. Okay. As we said before, don't let it turn into a big, vague guessing game. Okay. That is not what we want. All right. So I can see lots of suggestions for alternative elicitation techniques have come in. Let's have a look. So video clips. Yes, Asha, video clips can set a context really well. Yeah, like you could find a quick video of a lady like, oh, jumping up and down, screaming, happy. Yeah, obviously excited. That would be great. Stephanie, PowerPoint. Yeah, for sure. You know, instead of bringing in your paper images, you can put together a quick presentation. That would be brilliant. A Kader, a game like charades. Oh yeah. Again, anything visual like miming would be amazing. You know, if we were teaching the word excited, you could come in like, oh yes, whoa, you know, mime it out and let the students guess what feeling you're expressing. Okay. And Julia, a gap fill sentence. Yeah, exactly. That would be a really nice one because you're giving them a context. And yeah, you're kind of combining it, aren't you, with description, context, etc. So yeah, good work, guys. All of those would work really, really well as elicitation techniques. Okay. So just to recap on something I mentioned previously, we don't want it to turn into a guessing game. If the students can't answer the question, stop eliciting and provide the target language. Okay, just tell them. Don't let it drag on. If you feel like students may be almost getting the word, but not quite, you can try another method if you want. Like you could, you know, if they didn't get it from context, you could try it through mime or you could try it through synonyms. But yeah, basically, if they don't know, tell them and move on. Okay. So once we have elicited the new word or item, and students now know what it is, then we've got to concept check. Okay. Concept check questions are another massive category that we use a lot when teaching. And it's important that we know how to concept check effectively. So what are concept check questions? Well, they are questions we can ask to check whether our students have understood the language that we have presented. Okay. So it can be tempting to ask, do you understand? Okay. But believe me, that is not a reliable indicator of comprehension. Okay. If we ask, do you understand? The students will almost always say yes. Okay. Even if they haven't understood, they will say, oh, yes, yes, yes. Okay. They will answer yes, even if they don't, for a couple of reasons. It could be that they don't want to make you feel bad. Like they don't want to say, actually, no, I didn't understand, because they don't want to hurt your feelings. It could be that everybody else says, yes, they understand. So they don't want to admit that they don't understand because then they'll feel a bit silly. So, you know, there are loads of reasons that students will say they've understood, even if they haven't. For that reason, do you understand is not an effective concept checking question. Okay, so please don't use it as a concept check question. When you are formulating concept check questions, probably the most challenging thing is to keep them very, very simple. Okay, they have got to be very straightforward. Yeah, there can be no room, no gray area, okay? No room for misunderstanding. Keep them simple and unambiguous. As with everything in teaching, you've got to grade your language, okay? So if you are teaching lower level students, think about the words you're saying. You've got to keep them as simple as possible, okay? Easy, well, we say easy, it's actually difficult to write easy concept check questions, but easy ones, especially for low level, could be yes or no questions, okay? Or closed questions, okay? Where there is only one possible answer, okay? Then, if necessary, you can ask open-ended questions, or you can give further examples, or you can ask for students examples. Okay. I always think with concept check questions, start easy, and if necessary, you can then go on to ask more difficult ones. Let's look at an example of some good concept checking questions. Remember before we elicited the word excited? So now that students know the word is excited, it's time to concept check. It's time to find out if they've understood. So we could start with a nice yes or no question. The teacher asks, do you get excited when invited to a party? Yeah, students hopefully will say yes. Okay. How about going to the dentist? We imagine that the students would say no. Okay. So you see, we started with two pretty easy ones, but yet at the same time, these questions confirm understanding, right? Now, we might move to a more challenging question. Is excited a good or a great feeling? Okay. And hopefully the students will say, oh, it's better than good, it's great. All right. So then you can reiterate, you can say, yes, being excited is a great feeling when we know that something good is going to happen. All right. So you can see that we have effectively confirmed understanding just by asking a couple of carefully chosen questions. If you wanted to carry on with the concept checking, if you thought maybe there was still a tiny bit of doubt on some of the students' faces, you could ask them, oh, can you give me an example of a time when you felt really excited? Yeah. Or you can say, is there anything happening in the future that you are excited about? Yeah. And they might tell you like, oh, yes, I'm going to a wedding, or, oh, yes, I'm going on holiday. All right. So yeah, that would be a typical concept checking question dialogue between teacher and student. As I said before, the challenge is to keep the CCQs as easy and as straightforward as you can. Okay. So they were some examples of really good CCQs. Now, let's look at an example of bad CCQs. It's always nice to see what not to do as well as what to do. So imagine we have elicited the word dinosaur. Now it's time to concept check. You ask this question, what animal is large and bites? Okay. Now, this is a bad CCQ, right? It's a bad CCQ because the answer could literally be dozens of animals. Okay, it's not specific to dinosaur. The students could say dog, for example. They could say lion. They could say tiger, or they could say tiger. Okay, so it's a bad CCQ because it's not specific to the word. Okay, it's ambiguous. Another CCQ, have you seen one? I mean, I can see where the teacher is coming from here. I can see why they've asked this question. But again, it could be misconstrued by the students as a trick question. Yeah. It's a yes or no question, so the students may if they don't know if they've seen one or not, they could be just like, I don't know. Yeah. Or they might just say yes because they expect the answer to be yes. So you see, it kind of leaves things open to interpretation a bit too much. So I have a mini challenge for you all. I'm going to give you a moment to see if you can write a better CCQ for the word dinosaur. Okay. So think of an effective CCQ for dinosaur. I'll give you 30 seconds to type your questions into the chat box, and then we'll have a look through them. It's tricky, right? Thinking of effective CCQs can be pretty hard. It's very, it's very easy in theory, but in practice it can be quite tricky. I'll give you another 15 seconds. See if you can think of a good CCQ for dinosaur. Okay, so Asha, you have a nice one here. Can you think of a large prehistoric animal that has been extinct for a long time? Yeah, that would do. That would be good. Students may not understand the word prehistoric, though. We may need to grade that. So we could say, for example, is it a large animal that lived a long time ago? Yeah. They might not know the word extinct either, yeah, because that's quite a high level word. So we might change that for, is it an animal that doesn't exist anymore? Yeah, or is it an animal that is not alive anymore? But yeah, you definitely have the potential there, Asha, for a really good CCQ. Yeah. So is it a large animal that lived a long time ago but is not alive anymore? Yeah, that would be great. Okay. So Van Meyer, what is a large lizard from long ago? Yeah, absolutely. If students know the word lizard, very good. Okay, or you could just say, is it? Yeah, is a dinosaur a giant lizard from long ago? Okay. So do you know about the huge creature that used to live on the earth long, long time ago? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or again, frame it as a yes no question. Is it a huge creature that used to live a long time ago? Nice. So, Sanette, is a dinosaur a large or small animal? Yeah, very good. I think, though, that there were loads of different sizes of dinosaurs, weren't there? So there may have been some smaller ones. Yeah. So we could ask maybe, was it always a really big animal or were they different sizes? Okay. We could even ask, like, do you know the name of a type of dinosaur? Yeah. Or if we wanted to make that easier, was a T-Rex a dinosaur? Yeah. All right. So yeah, good job, guys. Some good questions there. Always remember, though, to simplify as much as you can. Okay, keep the language simple and see if you can phrase them as either yes no questions or questions with two options. Yeah, like do dinosaurs live now or did they live a long time in the past? Yeah, so that the students have the two options of now or a long time in the past. Okay, or it can be more open-ended. Yeah, like can you name an example of a dinosaur? Can you name a movie about dinosaurs? Yeah, actually, Asha and Sandra, you were saying the same thing. Yeah, Jurassic Park would be a great. We could definitely incorporate Jurassic Park into a good CCQ for this. So Chantal, what non-existing animals do you find in a museum? Yeah, absolutely. Or what animals from the past? Yeah. Or would you find these animals from the past in a museum? Absolutely. That's it. Good job, guys. So yeah, the thing with CCQs, keep them simple. Okay, keep them very straightforward and always remember to grade your language. Okay. So that pretty much covers it for CCQs. All right. Let's look at the third category of questions that we ask a lot to our students, and they are instruction checking questions. Okay. So when we give our students instructions for a task, okay, we've also got to check that they have understood the instructions. We've got to make sure that they understand what they need to do. Because if we don't check our instructions and we just let them begin the task just like that, okay, things can get pretty out of control if we then discover that they don't know what to do. Because then they start the task, we have to stop the task again, we have to give the instructions again. Yeah, it can turn into a bit of a disorganized mess if we don't check that students have understood instructions. So, as we said with concept check questions, do not ask, do you understand? Okay, because students will always say yes. Okay, yes, I understand. Okay, and we can never be truly sure if they actually do until the task has started, but by that time it's too late. So imagine I want my students to complete a grammar exercise. And in this grammar exercise, they have to take the verb in brackets and they have to put it in the correct tense to complete a sentence. Okay, so these are the instructions I might give. So everybody, I want you to look at this activity and you hold up the paper, hold up the worksheet. Okay, I want you to look at these sentences, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, can you see the verb in brackets? I want you to put that in the correct tense in the sentence. Okay, you have 5 minutes to do this activity and I want you to work alone. Okay, so imagine they are my instructions. I now want to check that students have understood those instructions. Yeah, so I have a couple of options here. I might ask them, so can you tell me what you have to do? Yeah, and I might just choose one student. Yeah, I might say, Maria, can you tell us what you have to do? And hopefully Maria will say, we have to look at the sentences 1 to 5 and put the verb in the correct form to complete the sentence. Yeah, hopefully that's what she says. If there are lots of steps to the instruction, you might want to break it down like, so what's the first thing you must do? And the student will hopefully say, look at the sentences. Yeah, look at these sentences 1 to 5. Okay, what's the next thing you have to do? Yeah, ask another student, what's the next thing? Put the verbs in the correct tense. Okay, good. I might ask, how long do you have? Hopefully the students will say 5 minutes. And I might ask, are you working alone or are you working with your partner? Yeah, or I might phrase it like alone or together. Yeah, alone or in pairs. And hopefully the students will say alone. Okay, so depending on how complicated the task is, you can either ask them to repeat the instructions, or you can break it into what's the first thing, what's the second thing, how long do you have, are you working alone or in pairs? Okay. Another question you might ask is how many questions must you answer? So imagine, for example, there are 20 sentences on the paper, but you only have time to do 5. Yeah. In your instructions, you've told them to do 1 to 5. but we want to make sure, right, that students aren't going to try to do all 20 because we don't have time. So in that case, you would have to confirm, like, okay, I know there are 20 sentences, but how many do you have to answer? All right. So again, with instruction checking questions, try to keep them simple. Yeah, try to keep them as short and to the point as possible, and try to check that they have understood all of the elements to the task. Okay, it can be well worth checking, like how long have you got? Are you working alone? Are you working with your partner? Are you working in groups, etc.? Okay. So when you get working on assignments, you will have to provide examples of instruction checking questions. Okay, so do think about them carefully and keep them as simple as you can. All right, so that covers eliciting, concept check questions, and instruction checking questions. As some general tips for all of those types of questions, please try to be aware of your use of language. Okay, think really carefully about how you deliver your questions. As we said, you've got to grade your language. Okay, keep it simple, keep it unambiguous, and very, very importantly, plan your questions in advance where possible. Okay, so when you are lesson planning, write down, think about your CCQs and write them into your plan. It can be extremely hard to think of a CCQ on the spot. Okay, so write your CCQs when you're lesson planning. Write your instruction questions, your instruction checking questions when you're lesson planning. Okay, plan them all in advance. Plan how you're going to elicit in advance. Okay, you can do all of this in the lesson planning stage, so that when it comes time to step in front of your students and deliver your different types of questions, you will be ready. There will be no hesitation. You will just rattle them off and be good to go. Okay, so there we have it. There is our presentation on different types of questions. Now it is your turn to ask me all of your questions. Okay, so any doubts you may have about eliciting, concept checking, or instruction check questions, please pop them in the chat box and we will go through them all. While I am waiting for some questions to come in, I'm going to go back and see where you're all tuning in from today, because that's always my favorite part. I don't think I told you, I'm in Ireland. I'm in the west of Ireland. So yeah, it's cold. Autumn has definitely arrived with a bang. Okay, so hi Asha in New Jersey. Good to see you. And Megan, I remember you, Megan, and we've met before. You're just across the sea. Yeah, South Africa, very good to meet you. Abbas, I have definitely seen you here before. So Stephanie in Alabama. Oh, Stephanie, I wish I could hear you speak, because that is literally my favorite accent in the world. It's a beautiful accent. Okay, we have England. Hi, Agnieszka, how are you? And Georgia, oh my goodness, how exciting. I have never been to Georgia, I'm afraid. I bet it's amazing. Jana, if I am reading your name correctly. Jana. Oh, Jana. Good, nice to meet you, Jana. Reminding me of the Cyrillic alphabet that I learned a long time ago. All right. So hello, Van Meer. I'm so glad you're looking forward to practicing eliciting. It's really fun. Once you start doing it, you literally can't stop. Okay. So Megan, you have an interesting question here. With the CCQ, the concept check question, phrasing change for age and level of learners though? Yeah, absolutely, Megan. You will always be grading. So if you're teaching a very low level class, maybe elementary, the language you use will be so simple. Okay, short questions, easy questions. Okay. Whereas if you're teaching a higher level class, then of course you will be able to use more advanced words and concepts and examples. The same with age, like if you're teaching kids, you'll have to ask about very age appropriate situations. Yeah, use like age appropriate visuals, like use cartoons, yeah, maybe toys, that sort of thing. So yeah, absolutely, Megan. It will depend on the level of English and the age of your students, how you phrase your CCQs. All right, good. Nice question, Megan. Thank you. Let's see. Okay. Oh, some wonderful compliments coming in here. Thank you so much. I'm glad you've enjoyed it. I wonder, do we have any questions? Oh, yes, Asha, I see one here. So roughly how many minutes should you spend for eliciting? Say about a maximum of 5 minutes. Well, I would say, Asha, that when we're eliciting, we want to do it pretty quickly, okay? We don't want it to drag on too long, okay? Because then students can get a bit frustrated. So rather than thinking of it in terms of the amount of time you should spend, try to think of it as the number of questions you should ask, okay? So if you ask like 2 or 3 really good questions and they still don't know, then you can tell them and move on. Okay. Because as I said, we don't want to turn it into a big old guessing game, because that will just annoy the students. So think of it in terms of questions. So for example, remember I said a phrase at the beginning of class, to make a mountain out of a molehill. I've no idea why that phrase sprung into my mind, it just did. So imagine I wanted to know if my advanced students knew this expression. I might say something like, oh, my sister was so angry with me yesterday, but all I did was forget to buy milk. Okay, I forgot to buy milk and she got so angry. Yeah, she really yeah. So I've kind of set up a context, and I'm trying to elicit by having my students complete my sentence. Yeah. So she really yeah. Okay, so maybe students would know the answer, maybe they wouldn't. So I might try again. Like, can you think of a phrase that means to overreact? Yeah. Okay. And maybe they're still looking at me like, oh. So I might try one more time. I might say, okay, I'll give you a clue. To make a out of a okay. Then if they don't know that, then I will say, okay, the new expression is to make a mountain out of a molehill. Yeah. And then I would write it up on the board. Okay. So you see, it's not really a matter of time, but it's a matter of the number of questions and the number of times that you try to elicit it. If they really don't know, just tell them and move on. Okay, so does that help, Asha? Does that answer your question? Let me know in the comments. All right, so hello, Julia. I only have one question. Do you have any advice on how to elicit in classes that are a bit reluctant to participate in eliciting? Teens or adults? Oh gosh, yeah, I have been in some of those classes, Julia. It's like pulling teeth sometimes. Honestly, Julia, I would say just go in with a lot of energy. Okay, like oh, you're super excited to hear their answer. Like, oh, I can't wait to hear your answer to this question. Okay. Or I have a really good question for you that I know you're going to answer immediately. All right. So, like, you've got to go in with that energy, and tell them in advance that you are expecting an answer. All right. Um, then ask your questions. Yeah. And then, okay, let's go. Answers. Yeah. And then, okay, guys, don't keep me waiting. Let's hear those answers. Yeah. If they're still not answering, you can say, would you like me to ask the question again? Yeah. So you've just got to, you've got to just go in there with energy and tell them that you are expecting an answer. Okay. And just wait until there is an answer. Okay. Don't be afraid of the silence. Yeah. You can even say, okay, I've so many more words to tell you, but I can't move on until we answer this question. Yeah. Basically, just put lots of pressure on them, keep positive, and an answer will come. I promise. Yeah, just energy, Julia. Don't let them away with not answering. All right. Good. Okay, thank you. Okay, Sanette, could a listing be used as a warmer activity? Yeah, why not? As brainstorming. Okay. We may phrase it more as brainstorming though for a warmer, where I could say, okay, everyone, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to write down as many words related to sport as you can. Okay. Or you could say, today is really cold and wet. What other weather conditions can you think of? Okay. So once you have brainstormed whatever the topic of your lesson is going to be, okay, then you might do a little listing. You might say, so look at all of these words on the board. What do you think our topic is today? Yeah, or what do you think the context of the lesson is? Okay. So yeah, nice question, Sanette. Yeah, I mean, always give the students a chance to do some brainstorming or some prediction. That's a great way to start a lesson. All right, thank you. So Jürgen, hello. I remember you from before. Welcome back. I think what I've learned is that you can use the TL and CCQs, but not during eliciting. Yeah, absolutely, Jürgen. Definitely in CCQs. But remember, when we're eliciting, it doesn't make sense to use the target language, does it? Because if we're trying to elicit the target language, we can't just give it away. Okay. So yeah, you have absolutely learned correctly. You have a good understanding of how it all works. All right. So hello, Chantal. How do you elicit L1 students when they don't understand English? Yeah, Chantal, this can be a real issue if you're teaching, say, beginners or like very low elementary students. I would say, Chantal, in that case, try to use images as much as you can. Whether it's a picture that you bring in from a magazine, whether it's a flashcard if you have them, whether it's you drawing something on the board, whether it's you miming something visually. Yeah. Try to incorporate visuals as much as you can. Okay. Really exaggerate your facial expressions. Like if you're teaching something like happy, sad, angry, okay, like really exaggerate your expressions. Try to make things as visual as you can. Okay, that would be my top tip. If you can't use visuals, again, just keep your language very, very, very simple. Okay. For example, imagine you have taught the word happy with the visual, and you also want to teach the word sad. So because you've just taught them the word happy, you could say, oh, not happy. Mm-mm-mm. Okay, not happy. What's the word? Okay, or even just not happy. Yeah. So, you're kind of build on something they know, um, to get out something new. And hopefully they would get that the word is sad. All right. So yeah, lots of visuals, Chantal. Visuals for all levels, but especially the lower level learners. Okay, so hello, Aya. Do you have any strategies for listening towards when you teach Asian students? They tend to keep quiet if the teacher is asking questions. Well, I would say I remember the answer I get to Julia with when she was asking about the reluctant teenagers or the reluctant adults. You've got to go in with tons of energy. Okay. Let them know in advance that you are expecting an answer, that you do want an answer. Okay. So yeah, lots and lots of energy. Keep it very simple. Okay. In that case, they could be, a student could be shy because they don't understand or they don't know. So, they don't understand your question or they don't know the answer. So yeah, go in very positive and keep your eliciting methods very, very simple and unambiguous. Okay. That would be my main my main advice. Energy, positivity. Okay. And again, don't be afraid of the silence. If they don't answer immediately, wait, stand there and wait. It's like, okay, anybody? Would you like to try? Yeah. Don't let them off the hook. We've got to build the habit of getting them to answer our questions. Even if they're not super enthusiastic at first, hopefully they will get more enthusiastic. Okay. So, hello, Mike. I also recognize your name. What's the difference between PPP and TTT teaching methods when we want to begin with elicitation? Well, Mike, with PPP, we typically elicit a lot in the presentation stage. Okay. We try to elicit the new words or the new grammar point. Yeah, that happens in the first P, which is presentation. With TTT, or test, teach, test, the first stage, test, we're kind of asking students to do something that we're not sure they know yet. So, we're testing rather than eliciting. In the second stage, the teach stage, then we might do a bit of eliciting. We will try to fill in the gaps or fill in the gaps in their knowledge that emerged after the first T stage. So yeah, PPP, you're eliciting in the first stage, the presentation stage. And in TTT, you're eliciting in the second stage, which is the teach stage. All right. So hopefully that made sense. Okay, Julia, thank you for the ideas. It reminds me of my high school teachers. Yeah, Julia, I know. Don't you feel sorry for them now? Don't you wish you could just go back and be that enthusiastic student for them? Yeah, I'm glad that helped. Yeah, energy. That's the key. All right. So, Kevin, hello. If there is a class where we must teach a specific grammar point, but a new student doesn't know the previous grammar points, what can we do? Let's say the student doesn't know the modals for conditionals. Yeah, that can happen, Kevin, especially in private language schools where students might join at different points of the year, so that half the class may know something that the newer half of the class won't know. In that case, Kevin, I would just carry on as normal. Okay, I wouldn't really make any concessions for the newer people, because ultimately you are going to teach the grammar point anyway. Yeah. So, even if they don't know the answers in the eliciting stage, it's not the end of the world. Maybe the other students will know. Yeah. You'll have other people, other students to answer your questions. So, yeah, I wouldn't typically make any concessions for the newer students. as long as the students who had been in class longer were able to contribute to the eliciting questions, if that makes sense. Okay. Now, if nobody knew anything about the grammar point, okay, then, you would just teach it from scratch, okay, for everybody. All right. But yeah, I mean, remember, students are going to end the lesson with the meaning, form, and phonology of the grammar point. So, good enough. All right. Thank you, Kevin. And I will bring my positive energy. Oh, always. Always, Aya. That can be a big challenge of teaching too, because sometimes we all have these days when we're just a little bit, a little bit meh. We can't do that when we're teaching, right? We've got to just put on our game faces and go for it. No matter how we're feeling before class, it's all positivity in class. So, that can be tough, but it's actually really nice too, because sometimes after class, you're like, that was amazing. I just got to forget about everything for an hour. And we just had a lovely, positive, happy hour. But yeah, teaching is interesting. It's a lot of psychology going on, I find, both for the teacher and the students. Okay, good. So, Julia, have you ever personally used small rewards such as sweets, candy, stickers to produce or to promote participation? Will depend on the age, on the school age class, of course. Honestly, Julia, for participation in a general sense, not so much. And I'll tell you why. With things like eliciting, some kids may not participate because they genuinely don't know the answer. Okay. And we don't want to penalize them for not knowing the answer, right? Because that's just going to make them disengage even more. So I would be very reluctant to reward them on participation, because maybe they're not participating because they just don't understand. Or maybe they're not participating because they're shy. Okay. And like seeing their more outgoing, confident classmates get rewards just might make them feel even worse. So what I would typically do, Julia, if I were giving rewards, it would be for behavior and it would be for effort. Okay, but not necessarily participation. Okay, because we don't want to penalize someone for what may essentially be their personality. Okay, or their lack of knowledge of a particular area. Does that make sense, Julia? I hope I explained that well. Really, yeah, I don't believe in penalizing students for being shy or for not knowing stuff. That's definitely not what we want to do. That said, I mean, every group is different, especially if you're teaching young learners. Every group of students is different. So, I'm saying I'd never do it, but who's to say if I got a particular group that it might work with, I might give it a go. Yeah. Every student is, every class is different. All right. So thank you, Julia. Great question. So Mike, I have some questions about pronunciation. So can I ask now? Well, you know what, Mike? Why not? We have 5 minutes left and we don't have any other comments or any other questions about questions. So yeah, sure. Put in your question and I'll do my best to answer. Okay. Julia, it makes sense. Good. I just got reminded of my uni lecturer who would throw candy across a lecture hall. Nice. Yeah, it's funny. I think it's funny, isn't it? Because with adult learners, I think it would be a whole other ball game, right? It could work really well with adult learners. It could make them laugh. My previous answer, I was just thinking of kids and teenagers and how we might we might damage their very fragile self-esteems. But I can see with adult learners that it might be quite fun. Yeah, interesting. Okay, thank you, Julia. That's given me something new to think about. All right. So let's just do a quick run through. Just make sure I haven't missed anything. No, I think we're all up to date. Let's see, Mike. Julie asked about rewards. So can I use extra points for answering difficult questions to encourage them to participate? Again, Mike, I don't think I would necessarily go down that route, especially not with children and teenagers, because, again, it will result in the students who don't know the answers feeling bad about themselves. And the ones that do know the answers will get all of the rewards. And when you think about it, the very, very clever students who do know the answers and who all of this comes naturally to, they are probably the ones that least need reinforcement. Of course, every student needs positive reinforcement and reward, feeling good about themselves. But I think whatever way we look at this, it will be the students who don't know the answers, who will end up feeling pretty poor about themselves, pretty bad about themselves. So yeah, it's interesting, the whole reward thing, isn't it? It's important to think about that from both perspectives, like from the really, clever or the really confident kids viewpoint, but also from the shyer, perhaps less academically able kids viewpoint. That's why I would tend to keep rewards just based on effort and behavior, rather than actual academic knowledge. Okay. Oh yeah, we're going down quite the reward rabbit hole, aren't we? But yeah, it's definitely well worth thinking about, because I know we all use reward systems like with the best intentions. We all come from a place of positivity and positive reinforcement, but yeah, just because we're coming from the positive point or the positive side of things, it doesn't mean that all of the students will necessarily feel the positive effects. Yeah. All right. So we have 2 minutes. 2 minutes left. We have time for maybe 2 more questions or 1 more question, if you can think of anything. In the meantime, I am going to ask you a favor, and I am going to ask you to complete our end of webinar survey. Okay. As I always say at the end of all of our presentations, being a teacher, being a trainer, it is all about continuous improvement. Okay. We are always looking for ways to get better. There is no such thing as the perfect, fully formed teacher. Okay. No matter how long you've been doing it, there are always points of improvement. So if you could go along to this website, I'm going to pop it in the chat box. We would really appreciate just 2 minutes of your time to hear your thoughts. Let's see, TTALIVE. Okay, excellent. Okay, so if you could follow that link or scan the QR code, it will take you to our end of webinar survey. Okay, Mike, you are right in the last moment with your pronunciation question. Let's have a look. So what is the difference between disappearing vowels in the schwa sound? Example, the word average. In American English, they pronounce the schwa sound, but you drop it in British. Yeah, Mike, you have answered your own question. It is an accent thing. Okay. I would say average. Yeah. A British person would say average. An American person may say average. It's just variation. It's accent variation. Okay, nothing more. I would say that when you're teaching your students, like if you are American, for example, Mike, you will teach them the way you say it. Yeah, you'll tell them this is how I say it, average. But you may hear it said differently by an English person or an Irish person or a Scottish or Welsh person. Okay, so it is not right or wrong. It's just accent variation. And yeah, just pronounce it as you would say it, but make students aware of other variations too. All right, good. Nice question, Mike. All right, so everyone, our time is up. It is like the quickest hour of my week, always. So thank you so much for coming along and listening and asking so many great questions. And yeah, I hope you all have an excellent week ahead. All right, everyone. Hope to see you again soon. Bye.